The clang of the iron door was the sound of the world ending. For Leo, it was a final, resonant note that sealed the symphony of his failures. He was 22, and the state had determined that the next decade of his life would be spent in the gray, concrete monotony of Blackwood Penitentiary. His crime was a botched armed robbery, a desperate, stupid act born of poverty and a festering sense of futility. No one was hurt, but a life was stolen all the same, his own. The man who entered cell block C was a collection of sharp angles and sullen silence. A boy really, who had learned to armor his brokenness with a sneer. The years in Blackwood were a lesson in erosion. The world shrank to the dimensions of a cell, the rhythm of his life dictated by bells and barked orders. He learned the brutal hierarchy of the incarcerated, the currency of cigarettes and favors, the language of violence that simmered just beneath the surface of every interaction. He fought, not for dominance, but for survival, the animal part of him taking over. The thoughtful, quiet boy who had once loved taking apart radios to see how they worked was buried deep, a fossil under layers of resentment and regret. Parole was denied twice. The board saw the hardness in his eyes, the defensive hunch of his shoulders, and deemed him unreformed. He believed them. His salvation, as it turned out, arrived not as a key, but as a cannonade. The war, a distant conflict in the oil-rich deserts of Collar, was going badly. The nation needed soldiers, and in a controversial act of desperation, the government passed the Redemption Recruitment Act. Nonviolent and certain violent offenders were offered a choice: serve the remainder of their sentence in a military uniform or rot in their cells. Leo signed without hesitation. Prison had taught him there were worse things than dying. Basic training was a different kind of prison, but one with a horizon. The drill instructors were just as brutal as the corrections officers, but their brutality had a purpose: to forge a single, functional weapon from the disparate, broken men they were given. Leo, with nothing left to lose, found a strange kind of freedom in the absolute surrender of self. He followed orders with robotic precision. He excelled at marksmanship, the controlled breath and steady trigger pull of meditation that silenced the chaos in his head. He was strong, hardened by years of manual prison labor, and he was unafraid of hardship. He discovered, to his own surprise, that he was a natural leader. The other cons, a motley crew of thieves, fraudsters, and brawlers, looked to him. He didn't command with bluster or threats, but with a calm, unshakable competence. He was one of them, and he wouldn't break. Deployed to the sun-scorched, sand-blasted wastes of Collar, the 42nd Penal Battalion, nicknamed the Ghost, was given the worst jobs: clearing minefields, holding indefensible outposts, leading patrols through insurgent-held towns. It was here, amidst the terror and the tedium, that Leo truly transformed. The selfish survival instinct of prison melted away, replaced by a profound, almost primal, need to protect the men beside him. They were all damned, all ghosts, but they were his ghosts. The moment that defined his second life came during the battle for the strategic crossroads of Al-Ashari. Their platoon was pinned down in a ruined mosque, caught in a deadly crossfire. Their lieutenant was dead, their sergeant grievously wounded. Morale shattered like the plaster raining down from the bullet-riddled dome above. Panic was a contagion, about to consume them all. Then Leo stood up. He wasn't tall, but in that moment, he seemed to fill the broken doorway. His voice, usually so quiet, cut through the din of gunfire with a gravelly authority. Jenkins, Morales, suppressing fire on that left nest. Donnelly, with me, were flanking right. The rest of you, make every shot count. We are not dying in this godforsaken hole. It wasn't a request. It was a statement of fact, and they obeyed. Something in his eyes, a cold fire they had all seen in the mirror, promised that he would either lead them out or die trying. Leo's flanking maneuver was a masterpiece of desperation and instinct. He used the rubble as cover, moving with a predator's grace he never knew he possessed. He took out the machine gun nest with a well-thrown grenade, turning the tide of the firefight. By the time reinforcements arrived, the insurgents were in retreat, and Leo was applying a tourniquet to a young soldier's leg, his own arm bleeding from a shrapnel wound. He received the Star of Valor for that day. The citation spoke of conspicuous gallantry and intrepidity at the risk of life above and beyond the call of duty. The photograph of the former convict, his face smudged with dirt and blood, being decorated by a stern-faced general, was plastered across newspapers back home. The narrative was irresistible. The redeemed criminal, the hero forged in hell. Leo felt like a fraud sometimes. He hadn't been brave. He had just been too angry and too responsible to quit. But the medal was real, and so was the respect in the eyes of his men. He had found a purpose, keeping people alive. The war ended. Leo returned to a country that hailed him as a hero, a bizarre mirror image of the society that had once thrown him away. He was free, pardoned, and adrift. The structure of the military was gone, and the adrenaline-fueled purpose of combat had faded into a dull, persistent tinnitus of memory. He tried a few jobs, security, construction, but felt caged by their mundanity. The ghost of the man he had been in prison still whispered to him, and the ghost of the soldier he had become screamed for a mission. The turning point came in a quiet, sterile room, not a dusty battlefield. He was visiting Donnelly, the soldier who had followed him on that flanking run in Al-Ashari. Donnelly was dying, not from a bullet, but from a rare aggressive blood disorder the doctors said was a result of exposure to chemical weapons. They called it collar syndrome. Seeing his friend, once so vital, now shriveled and yellowed in a hospital bed, filled Leo with a different kind of rage. It was a cold, focused fury. He had saved Donnelly from bullets, only to lose him to an invisible enemy. In that hospital, Leo found his third and final calling. He remembered the boy who loved taking apart radios, the soldier who could solve tactical problems with logic and intuition. He decided he would fight this new enemy. He was in his mid-30s, with a GED earned in prison and no family. But he possessed a terrifying, single-minded will. He used his veterans' benefits and a small financial grant awarded to war heroes to enroll in community college. He was decades older than his classmates. His hands, which once held a rifle and fashioned a shiv, now clumsily manipulating a pipette. But he was relentless. He moved from community college to a state university, studying biochemistry and microbiology. Professors were initially wary of the intense, silent older student, but they soon recognized a rare mind, one that saw problems in 3 dimensions, that wasn't afraid of failure. Failure was an old acquaintance of Leo's. He earned his PhD at 45, his dissertation on retroviral vectors attracting the attention of a major research institute. He founded his own small biotech firm, Aegis Solutions. The name was deliberate. In war, an aegis was a shield. He would now make shields for the body. He assembled a team of brilliant, young, often disillusioned scientists, and he led them not as a CEO, but as a platoon leader. The mission was clear: find a treatment for collar syndrome and other autoimmune disorders. For years, they hit wall after wall. Funding dried up, experiments failed. Peers dismissed them as a fringe operation led by a charismatic amateur. Leo's past was an open secret, and some in the staid academic world never let him forget it. But the man who had survived Blackwood and Al-Ashari would not be broken by grant rejections or failed clinical trials. He poured every penny of his own money, every ounce of his spirit into the work. He slept on a cot in his office. His world once again shrunk to a single, purposeful room. The breakthrough came from a place of lateral thinking, a connection no one else had made. While reviewing data on a modified adenovirus, he remembered a declassified military report on the neurotoxic agents used in choler. Their mechanism of action, it described, was to hyperstimulate the immune system until it turned on itself. What if, Leo theorized, you could use a harmless, engineered virus not to attack, but to deliver a corrective gene, a piece of code that would essentially recalibrate the immune response? It was a radical idea. His team was skeptical. It went against the prevailing orthodoxy. But Leo, the convict who had been written off, the soldier who had been sent on a suicide mission, had a deep and abiding faith in lost causes. He bet everything on it. The day the final clinical trial results came in was the quietest, most profound moment of his life. He sat in his office, the data streaming across his screen. The numbers were unequivocal. The treatment, dubbed Lymphogen, had not just managed the symptoms of choler syndrome. It had sent over 80% of trial patients in a full remission. Donnelly had been gone for years, but in that moment, Leo felt his friend's presence more strongly than he had in decades. He had finally built a shield that worked. The announcement sent shockwaves through the medical world. Leo Vance, the war hero, was now Leo Vance, the lifesaver. He was awarded every major scientific prize, his face once again on magazines, this time next to headlines like From Prison Cell to Lab Bench, and The Soldier Who Declared War on Disease. He never married, never had children. His life was his work. The profits from Lymphogen, which went on to treat thousands for a range of autoimmune diseases, were funneled back into research and into foundations he established for veteran healthcare and prisoner rehabilitation. He became a phantom, a quiet force for good, his past a source of strength, not shame. An old, grizzled journalist once asked him in an interview, "Dr. Vance, how do you reconcile the three men you've been? The convict, the soldier, the scientist?" Leo, now in his 70s, his hair white, his eyes still holding the ghost of both the prison yard and the laboratory, had thought for a long moment. "They aren't three men," he said, his voice soft but firm. "They are one man, learning. The fall taught me humility. The war taught me purpose. The science taught me hope. You cannot understand the light without having first navigated the absolute dark. I was not redeemed because I became a hero or a scientist. I was redeemed the moment I stopped thinking only of my own survival and started fighting for the lives of others. The rest was just putting one foot in front of the other on a very long road." He passed away peacefully in his sleep in a small apartment overlooking the institute that bore his name. On his simple wooden desk, they found 3 items: a faded photograph of his platoon in collar, the schematic for his next-generation gene therapy, and a single, tarnished dog tag from his time as a ghost. It was a life not of three separate stories, but a single, continuous, and extraordinary transformation, a testament to the unyielding potential for a human being to fall, to rise, and to remake themselves again and again until they finally get it right.